was raised in the church, right? And I was taught that you should never, ever question God. Like that's just something that you should never do. You don't question that, right? Now, I am a curious person, right? So when my mother passed away and she went to be with the Lord, well, I questioned God, right? Because she passed away about 4 months prior to me being married, right? And of course, I began to question, like, why? Why would you take my mom right before my wedding? She had been waiting for me to be married, for many, many years. She had been praying for God to send me a husband. And thank God she was able to meet him. But, I just was wondering, why would you take her 4 months before my wedding? And it was something that weighed heavy on me. And I even start feeling guilty about it, right? Because I said, oh, I shouldn't be questioning God and, wondering why. But it just wouldn't leave me. I just kept thinking, why? Why now? I began to question God, and I began to think, not questioning in terms of who he is, but just wondering why would allow this certain set of circumstances to happen, right? And so I began to study the word, just saying how God, can actually ask the question of the Lord, why, how thou forsaken me, right? So even God asks questions, right? So it is okay for us to ask questions, and as I did, right? So I found this scripture, and it talks about, I think it's Deuteronomy 29, somewhere around in there. And it talks about how the secret things belong to the Lord. So while we may ask questions of the Lord, and it is okay to do that, by the way, but it's okay to ask why. But the thing is that because he says that the secret things belong to the Lord, you may not get an answer, right? So although I was asking the Lord, why would you choose to have my mother to pass away right before my wedding? Listen, I still don't know why. But guess what? I have to accept the fact that that's what God chose, right? He chose that for my life. So even though we may question and say, why, why did this happen? Why did I lose my job? Why did my child pass away? Or why do people treat me this way? Or, why did my mother abandon me? Why did my family members abandon me? So many things. Why do I suffer from depression or mental illness? So many things that we can ask God why, and we are free to do that, right? But you have to be prepared for the answer. So you simply may not get an answer, just like I did, right? I just have to accept that that is God's will, right? We are his children. He knows what is best for us, right? So I pray that this has encouraged you. God bless you. And remember, do not ever give up before the miracle happens. God bless. Bye.